All right, joining me now, Erica Sagrins, campaign manager for Ready for Warren, and Mitch Stewart, founding partner with 270 Strategies, consulting firm that has partnered with Ready for Hillary. They are both Obama campaign alums. All right, the first question I want to is to the interpretation of the midterms and how they apply to 2016. Erica, I'll start with you. You think there are big takeaways from the midterms in thinking about the Democratic presidential primary field?
Yeah, I think there's a few key takeaways. The first is that Democrats really need to be able to articulate a strong, coherent economic vision for voters, one that resonates with middle-class voters, and there was a real lack of doing that on Tuesday. I think the second is that people are just really angry and frustrated with Washington and with Wall Street. We saw exit polls show that about 2/3 of voters said, like what Warren's saying, they feel the game is rigged in favor of the wealthy, of the powerful, and only 1% said that they thought the economy was excellent. And I think the other one is just that Democrats can't continue to play it safe. We need to think bigger. We can't just think we can do the same thing and try and run the same kind of candidates who seem like they're the most electable. Voters see through that, and we need someone with a really strong vision, which we think is Elizabeth Warren in 2016.
Mitch, what was your takeaway from the midterms?
Well, I think number one, Chris, is we got slaughtered. And I think it's important for Democrats to recognize. Yeah, I think it's important for Democrats to recognize that. But from there, I think I took 4 takeaways, 2 going into elections, then 2 coming out. The first is there's an avalanche of outside money right now that floods in midterms. In presidential years, candidates, certainly the presidential candidate, can kind of sort of bully up other down-ticket Democrats to that avalanche. But in midterms, there's a structural deficiency that we're going to have to address as a party. I think second, we take a lot of pride in evaluating what works and what doesn't work from cycle to cycle. And I agree with Erica. I think the biggest takeaway going into this election is that our message, Democrats' message to middle-class voters on the economy has not worked. And we need to figure out from President Obama to Vice President Biden all the way down the ticket, how do we articulate a message that, frankly, it has the highest stock market in history. It has 6% unemployment, lower than 6% unemployment, growing GDP. How do we articulate that to people so that it resonates? I think third is that while the Republicans certainly had a wave, this is not a mandate. In a lot of red states, my home state of South Dakota, a minimum wage increase passed. In a lot of other red states, it did too. So while it was a Republican wave, it's not a mandate to inherit or to enact Republican policies. And then finally, the last thing that I think this is really important for Democrats and progressives to take heart at is that this is not determinative, the 2014 elections, to 2016. We went through this before. 2010 was the worst election in 100 years. Unfortunately, 2014 might be the second worst. But it had no real impact on the election in 2012, and I think it's important for people to recognize that.
Let me ask you this. So I sort of agree with all those takeaways. Those all seem broadly correct to me from both of you. Mitch, let me ask you this question. This is a process question. It seems to me and I have a rooting interest because I'm a journalist who's going to cover this, so that's on the table. But it seems to me the best thing for the Democratic Party, for democracy, is a big, wide-open primary where people make their cases, they run attack ads at each other, they do oppo dumps on each other, that candidates have to work those muscles, they have to go press the flesh, they have to make their case, they have to hone their message, they have to defend against allegations of scandal, that they do all of that in the primary before you get to a nomination process, rather than a process of essentially acclamation, which is what it looks like we're going towards with Hillary Clinton. Do you agree with that?
Well, I'll say two points to your point. The first is we had probably the longest and most competitive primary, in a generation, if not longer, in 2007 and 8. And to think that both candidates weren't fully vetted and tested, I think is inaccurate. Second, though, is that, as part of the exit polling that a lot of organizations did, they asked Democrats, who is your presidential preference? And 83% said Hillary Clinton. And so in order to have a contested primary, I think it's important for there to be a diversity of opinions about who should be the presidential nominee. And right now, Democrats, whether you're a liberal or a moderate or whoever, are lined up now behind Hillary Clinton.
That's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Isn't it, Erica? I mean, that's part of the issue here.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, we need a Democratic primary and a competitive primary to really have that conversation about what we want the future of the party and the country to look like. I mean, do we want a candidate who is close to Wall Street, who's close to the banks that brought down the economy, or someone who's really spent their lives fighting for working families. And that's definitely a debate worth having. Voters want a choice. They don't want to be told this is who your nominee is. They want to have a choice, have that conversation and debate, and we absolutely need to have
Mitch,
it.
do you think that's a problem for Hillary Clinton, what Erica just said about being perceived as close to the banks or close to the titans of finance or close to the 1%?
No, I think Secretary Clinton has a strong record of fighting for minimum wage increases, advocating for women and children. I think she's got a record that's very proud in which to run on that, advocates for the middle class. The one thing that I would add to that, though, Chris, is that, as Democrats, I think we pride ourselves on being a big tent party. And, I think there's a lot of really qualified people that are going to look hard at 2016. And as a Democratic activist, I hope they do. I hope we do have a lot of diversity looking at running in 2016 because I think it'll make our party stronger.
But the problem is that the structural conditions are not facilitating that right now. As all the money lines up is ready for Hillary and Priorities USA declare, well, who are you kidding? No, who's going to walk into the mouth of the lion?
But when you say structural deficiencies, you're talking about 83% of Democrats right now who are already in support of Secretary Clinton's potential candidacy. I don't know what could change that.
Well, what can change it is perhaps a contested primary. So that's the question. Erica Sagrins, you are not officially affiliated with Elizabeth Warren. I just want to make that clear, right? This is a sort of side project goading her to run. And Mitch Stewart of 270 Strategies. Thank you both.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, that is all in for this evening. The Rachel Maddow Show starts.